Hi YouTube, Kyle Kittleson with MedCircle here, joined by neuropsychologist Dr. Judy.
Hi.
Thanks for being here. Oh, and we're boring Callie apparently. Callie, the lab, is joining us.
I'm so sorry that we're not more interesting for you.
Well, we're talking about failure to launch today on our YouTube channel. Make sure you hit subscribe and leave a comment below and give us a thumbs up. It helps us deliver these weekly videos right here on YouTube. Failure to launch. Common term that we hear about, not everybody knows the definition. What is it?
Yes, so failure to launch is something that Callie doesn't have. But failure to launch is when there's a stage of life where the person should have achieved independence. They should be living by themselves, have financial solvency, and be able to navigate their own social life and their daily functioning, and they're not.
Yeah.
So usually that means that by the age of 18 to 30, that's a really common phase where people start to say, is there a failure to launch problem? Because they're supposed to have achieved some level of independence and they haven't.
Yeah, we filmed an entire series on failure to launch, the mental health implications around that and the mental health conditions that could be contributing to a failure to launch. So I'm going to show you an inside look at that. But while we get that ready, leave a comment right now letting me know, and Dr. Judy and Callie, if you yourself have experienced a failure to launch or you know somebody who has. Leave us a comment in the comment section below. And here's an inside look into the series. Is this failure to launch something people can fully recover from?
Yes, absolutely. I think, we talk about it as a failure, but we've discussed earlier, it's not a failure. It is a problem with moving to the next stage of life. So again, when you're a baby, what are you dealing with? You're dealing with things like getting your needs met, you cry, you get fed, then you move on to toddlerhood. Then that main stage is learning to toilet train, right? So there's all of these stages of life that we're supposed to navigate through, and failure to launch just means that they were delayed somehow. It's like if you kind of want to think about it as somebody who was delayed in toilet training. It's like somebody who's delayed in achieving independence. But eventually pretty much everybody gets toilet trained.
Yeah.
And everybody can achieve some level of independence no matter where you start.
Right, good news. You can watch that entire series and more at medcircle.com. Now in this video, we're going to talk about the 11 signs that could indicate that an individual is experiencing a failure to launch. Let's go through them one by one. What's the first one? Okay,
the first one is a fear, an excessive fear or an anxiety. I mean, that can definitely be related to failure to launch, and we need to identify that if that's really the driver for people not wanting to leave their house, not wanting to apply for jobs, or not wanting to engage socially.
Yeah, you mentioned in the series that failure to launch is not a failure.
Yeah.
And especially if it is a consequence of an anxiety disorder or depression. So that first one makes a lot of sense.
That's right.
The second one.
So excessive emotionality, maybe a lot of back and forth, ups and downs in their emotions, what we call mood lability. That's really tough too, because 1 minute you're feeling great and then something happens, stresses you out, and you're down in the dumps. So how would you then navigate the everyday life challenges, whether it's trying to go to an interview or even the basic principles of, running errands. I mean, if you're in the middle and all of a sudden just feel horrible, forget the other 5 things on my list. I'm just going to go home and lay in bed.
Yes. All right. The third one I got confused about. It's confused or strange thinking. What is that?
Yeah, confused or strange thinking. I think it can be a lot of different things, but in this case, it could mean that they have maybe the elements of a thought disorder. So, when you have disorganized thinking, maybe you're in a period of paranoia or psychosis, that's very hard to organize your life into those spheres of daily functioning. I mean, it's just so hard for you to think about that when you're really consumed with other thoughts, where you're not only is your mind disorganized, but perhaps you're even having a little bit of paranoia. Oh, everybody's laughing at me. And anytime I step out of the house, people are talking about me. So clearly that's a severe and significant mental health condition that needs to be assessed and checked out.
Yes. Now, what about this fourth potential cause?
Yeah, so the fourth one is avoidance of social activities or friends. Oftentimes people will start to isolate more and more. And the shame and the stigma around failure to launch, especially as you're looking at your peers, oh my God, everyone's living their best life on Instagram, that's gonna make you feel even worse. Why would you get together with your friends if you have nothing good to talk about? Or you're having to talk about the fact that you're still living in your parents' house and you still got turned down for that other job too. So, it'll lead people to isolate more, and that isolation can also increase feelings of depression and anxiety too. So it just becomes this huge negatively feeding cycle.
Yeah, and failure to launch doesn't just mean, oh, well, you're 30 and live at home with your parents.
Yeah.
There are plenty of people, like we talked about in the series, who are 30 or whatever and live at home with their parents, but there's a reason behind it. In fact, you even shared a story about your husband.
Yeah, that's right. Because my husband was living at home for a short period of time in his 30s with his parents while he was saving money for buying a house. But he had a good job, and also culturally, it's really not that odd that you would live with your parents.
Yes.
But yes, like he had a twin bed. It was the same twin bed that he slept in when he was a high school student. And I slept in that.
And he married Dr. Judy.
Yeah, and I slept in that twin bed. You know, it was good. It felt like we were back in like high school.
Yeah, sneaking into his parents' house. I love that. Okay, so we have the avoidance of friends and social activities, but we also have the fifth one, which is difficulty understanding or relating to others.
Yeah, difficulty understanding and relating to others. This can really feed into things like social anxiety. And sometimes the social anxiety is in their head. Like they think that they're not able to navigate social situations very well, when in fact they're actually pretty good at it. Or sometimes it's actually a skills deficit, like they need social skills training. And sometimes individuals who struggle maybe with autism spectrum disorders, or even people who have avoidant personality, like they do struggle a little bit with the actual concrete skills of social relationships, that they're slightly awkward, or they can't quite hold reciprocal conversation or eye contact in a comfortable way. But there are ways to train them up. There's social skills protocols. You go for a couple of months, you get such a great learning, and it's an important thing to help them move past failure to launch, because social skills are huge for somebody's eventual social and job-like success.
Let's talk about item number 6.
Okay, so this is difficulties managing the day-to-day activities or activities of daily living. So these are just things like, getting yourself up, showered, maybe making yourself a basic meal, being able to kind of provide for yourself in very basic ways. And sometimes individuals will struggle with that. And sometimes it's related to an underlying mental health condition that hasn't been treated. When you're very depressed, it's hard to do activities of daily functioning. But sometimes it's also related to just, sort of a feeling of lack of motivation, which of course can relate to depression, but it could relate to other things, like a sense of hopelessness. What's the point? What's the point of getting out of bed today? I don't have anything better to do. I don't have anything to look forward to in my life. And so if that's the issue, we need to address those underlying factors.
Yeah, that's so critical. And I think it's important to drive this point home, which is that a failure to launch doesn't just mean, or it might not even mean, that the person is lazy.
No.
Or, oh, you're just a lazy person, get it together.
Yeah.
There are likely some underlying self-esteem issues, depression, anxiety. Something's going on there that we need to address before we can even talk about job success and your own apartment and all of these things.
Absolutely.
You mentioned not wanting to get out of bed. Let's move on to our next next
that's
point.
right. Well, poor sleep.
Yeah.
My goodness, sleep is like one of the number one keys to good emotion regulation. You need good quality sleep for good emotion regulation. So if you've had poor sleep, especially if you're chronically having issues with insomnia, well, it compounds the issue. So you'll start to have poor cognitive functioning. You're going to start to have more difficulties controlling your emotions. And if it's not resolved over time, it can really lead to other problems as well, including depression and anxiety. And so if the person has poor sleep, they have to start working on that first. And we've talked about cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia and just having good routines, nighttime and morning routines. And so helping, again, that individual understand the mechanisms of why they're having such difficulty when they have poor sleep, and also giving them those concrete skills so they can improve their sleep is going to be crucial.
And MedCircle actually has its very own series on sleep and anxiety. There is a video right here that just popped up that you can watch after you finish this one, available on the MedCircle YouTube channel. Now, in addition to sleeping, we got to talk about it, diet.
Oh yeah, another basic function of life. So sleep and then eating. Poor diet is going to be very problematic. Food is medicine. I feel like that's a message that hopefully we're talking about more. If you're eating well, if you're having healthful eating habits, then it's going to help in all areas of life. You're going to have better energy. You're going to feel like more ready to tackle the day. If you eat a lot of junk food, it's going to weigh you down. It's going to make you feel like you're lazy, feel unmotivated. So make sure that your diet is in check. And it doesn't have to be perfect, right? It doesn't have to be that you're only eating healthful food. I mean, you're allowed to splurge, you're allowed to have dessert, but just in general, having a good balanced diet, and that's going to really help go a long way for your physical and mental health.
Yes. Okay, what about item number 9?
Well, frequent and unexplained illnesses can also contribute to failure to launch. Sometimes individuals have had chronic physical conditions. Maybe they've had fibromyalgia, maybe they've had some kind of immune difficulty and they keep having autoimmune issues, like even developing something like lupus. These are things that are important to address, and sometimes the individual feels like powerless, like, oh my gosh, I don't know when this illness is going to hit, so I don't know if I can get a job. I don't feel comfortable with that. I mean, something even as seemingly innocuous as IBS can hold people back because they don't know when they have to go to the bathroom. So that's too scary to go on a date, spend a lot of time outdoors, be at a job where they don't know where the bathroom is. It's really stressful for people. And so making sure that those physical ailments are addressed is going to be the first step to addressing this problem.
Critical. That makes so much sense. What about number 10?
Substance abuse is a huge issue and a co-occurring issue with failure to launch, because one of the symptoms of substance abuse is that the individual starts to neglect the other parts of their life to do those drugs or to use alcohol or to play video games or whatever their particular brand of addiction is. And so until we get to the underlying issue with the addiction and address it, the failure to launch problem will continue.
Got it. And let's wrap it up with our final one, which is a big one.
Really tough one, which is self-harming behaviors, including cutting. So these are individuals who may or may not say that they're suicidal, but yet they bring a lot of harm to themselves through behaviors like cutting. Sometimes it's associated with borderline personality conditions, but sometimes people don't have to have a borderline personality condition. They can still cut. And what they say is, it brings me relief. When I'm depressed or anxious, I cut, and actually it makes me kind of feel better. It's a really weird principle because they're kind of distracting themselves from the mental anguish by causing physical anguish. And so that's a serious problem. We need to make sure that we address that and any other underlying co-occurring issues before we can see change in the failure to launch syndrome.
Yeah, this was such a action-packed series, and in the final session, you said something that stuck with me, which is, you were talking to the parents. You said, this is unlikely an argument about willpower, but it is absolutely a discussion on what skills you're going to equip this person with, even if they are 30 years old.
Absolutely.
And when you come from that place of really trying to help them with these skills, man, the results come a lot faster.
Absolutely. So get over your own shame or stigma about, oh my gosh, why didn't I teach my kid this skill at an earlier time? Don't worry about it, teach it to them now. And you know what, sometimes people just adopt things in different paces. You may have tried to teach this skill at a different time, they just weren't absorbing it.
That's right.
But maybe it'll work out now.
Yeah, and you said recovery, likely.
Yeah, very likely. It's just a delay in a developmental stage. So get them past the hump, like I was talking about in that last part of the series. Everybody eventually pretty much gets toilet trained, so everybody can also eventually overcome the failure to launch delay as long as you equip them the right skills, give them that proper psychoeducation, and again, instill them with hope.
Yeah, well, if you haven't checked out the MedCircle website, why haven't you? Go ahead and click the links below. You'll learn all of the different types of series and resources we have at MedCircle.com, including a lot more Dr. Judy and a lot more Callie the Lab. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you hit that subscribe button to get weekly mental health videos right here on YouTube. I'm Kyle Kittleson. Remember, whatever you're going through, you got this. Thanks for watching. If you liked what you just saw, then why not subscribe? Click right here for new episodes and new series every week. And to access exclusive mental health videos that we only release at MedCircle.com, check out the links below.